I'll have to make myself back. Can you?
Now I think we're good, right?
No, I did it. We can do it. I did it, Benson. Please keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody,
so I should
please.
stop recording?
Yes.
Because
okay.
okay, whatever. We'll figure that out later, but I pressed record as well. In any case, as I was saying, we're in for a treat today because we're going to the different quarters of the Old City, the sites, the famous sites and less famous sites in the Old City and around the Old City. We're going to go up to the Temple Mount. We're going to go into the Dome of the Rock. We'll go underground to 2 tunnels. I hope you got your flashlights. We're going down to the city of David. We're going into what is called, where most Israelis haven't been yet, it's called the Western Wall Tunnels. Some have been, most haven't. Here we go. Just give me a thumbs up so that I know you're seeing what I'm sharing right now, the globe. Toda rabah. And my name is Moshe Gold. Just before we head into Yerushalayim, I want to tell you that I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up in Be'er Sheva in the southern part of Israel. For the past 20 years, I've been living in Jerusalem. I did my master's in Hebrew U. I became a director at Camp Ramah in Israel in one of the departments. And now I'm a freelance guide. So over the past year or so, I've been giving tours on Zoom. And today I'm going to zoom on Israel with you. Zoom in on Israel is started right now. And we're looking at the map of Israel that you know so well. The reason that this is called the Mediterranean Sea is the same reason that Israel is considered in the middle. It's really in the middle between Asia on our right, on the top in the north, Europe, and in the south, Africa. 500 million birds a year come through Israel because it's connecting Africa with Europe. It's hot in Africa. It's a little bit cooler in the summer in Europe. So Israel is not only the center for 3 monotheistic religions, like Jerusalem being a center in a way for Islam, Christianity, and of course Judaism, but animals too recognize this, and countries around us recognize us as a connector between the different continents. We're 73 years old. We're taking baby steps forward. This is David Ben-Gurion. A few days ago, 73, celebrating 73 under the picture of Theodor Herzl. Where was the state declared? When did it happen exactly? Well, it wasn't in Jerusalem. It was in Tel Aviv, and it was on a Friday. It was in the afternoon of a Friday of May 14th. David Ben-Gurion said to his helpers, please tell everyone it's a secret. We don't want everybody to be standing outside. Of course, there's no secrets. When you ask people for a secret, they walk out, they see thousands of people celebrating. And David Ben-Gurion says, I feel like someone celebrating in a simcha that's going to go to the funeral tomorrow. And he knew what he was talking about because Arab nations invaded Israel the next day. And that connects to what I wanted to show you from last week. My wife, Vered, works in the Knesset, in the parliament, and she organizes some of these ceremonies. The main ceremony of Israel on Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut is that transition from Memorial Day for soldiers and victims of terror into Independence Day. Look at the word Yizkor and look at the generals saluting. And later on, you'll see, of course, the 12 chosen people to light the torches, marking 12 tribes of Israel that will honor the state. One little anecdote before we go into the old city of Jerusalem. I went around last week interviewing young Israelis to ask them what they think about Yom HaZikaron. These 2 youngsters are not so young. They're 18 and a half years old. They're going into the army in a few months. They had a gap year program preparing them for the IDF. I was so proud of them in the way they answered my question about Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. So this is Daniel and his friend who did not tell me her name.
Moshe, I cannot hear. I don't know if someone can hear it.
Okay. One moment. Can people hear what they're saying?
No.
You can't hear what they're saying.
No.
Let me share it again. The screen was shared. Let's do that again. That's what I was saying about the sound. Let's see right now if you can actually hear. For its 73rd birthday.
Yes.
You can hear?
Well, just then, yes.
Okay.
I wish that as a country we come together from all parts of our society in order to, appreciate this beautiful country that we have here and take care of it like it deserves to.
ומה את מאחלת ליום העצמאות לישראל בעברית או אנגלית?
מזל טוב.
מזל טוב לישראל. תודה. And what do you wish Israel on its 73rd birthday? Mazal tov. So on Mount Herzl, the theme this year was Israeli brotherhood. And other than the flags, by the way, can you see? Because I can't see you right now, but can you see what I'm sharing?
No.
No, you can't. Can you see right now?
We
No.
see you.
No.
Yeah, that's interesting. Share screen. I'm sharing the
No,
screen.
because Moshe, you are sharing the sound.
Yes, because I couldn't, for some reason, I don't know if it's, this never happened before, but it's a long story. But usually it lets me share the sound and the screen. Let's go back to the screen. We'll do the
Okay.
sound separately. And now I understand it's a different type of,
Right, exactly.
let's just move on and we'll figure out what works for us. You can see the screen right now, right?
Yes.
Yes, these are the flags, and this is a 102-year-old man called Yaish who makes Yemenite natural medicine for people, talking about Israeli brotherhood. These two people lit a torch. They're both Arab and Druze. She's Druze and he's Arab. He's a nurse and she's a doctor. They were honored because of their help with coronavirus. This man became very, very famous in Israel. His name is Maher. Everybody knows him because on the deathbed of a corona, very sick man that did not have anyone else from his family in the room, he says to this Arab Israeli Muslim nurse, he says, "Can you say the Shema Israel with me?" And he says, "Of course. We both believe in one God." And he says in Hebrew with this man, the Shema Israel. Israeli brotherhood was the theme this year, but we're on our way right now. We're on our way right now to enter the old city of Yerushalayim. And we're going to leave Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom HaZikaron. We'll come back to it at the end, the last minute of our tour. But right now, I want you to get ready for our tour in the largest city in Israel. The largest city in Israel is Yerushalayim. It is not Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has 450,000 people living in it. In the metropolitan of Tel Aviv, we have 3 to 4 million. But Yerushalayim has 70 names in the Bible. It is the capital of Israel. It's the largest city in Israel. And it's the most populated city in Israel. Israel today has 9 million people living in it.
Where is it?
900,000 live in Jerusalem. Let's just one little logistic thing. Let's make sure we're all muted. Everybody should mute themselves, so there's no sound other than the presentation itself. So 1/10 of the people of Israel live in Yerushalayim. And just to give you a feel for the numbers of the old city that is marked in red, we have 41,000 people living inside the old city. The old city has 4 quarters. It has the Temple Mount with the Dome of the Rock that we're going to visit today, the place of the first and the second temples before there was a mosque up there. The Muslim quarter up above over here on the left side where it says Church of the Holy Sepulchre that I'm marking right now, the Christian quarter, the Jewish quarter by the Western Wall area, and finally the Armenian quarter. Why do the Christians have 2 quarters? Armenians have been in the old city of Jerusalem. Back then it wasn't the old city, it was just Jerusalem for the past 1,700 years. Why did they come here from Armenia? Because they wanted to be close to this building, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So really there's 1 Jewish quarter, 1 Muslim quarter, which is the largest one, and then 2 Christian quarters. One is called the Christian quarter and one is known as the Armenian quarter. I'm sorry, once again, give me a thumbs up if you could see the picture. Hopefully you can. Toda rabah. Ladies and gentlemen, we say it 3 times in our prayer, Shacharit, Mincha, and Arvit. Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayem Eitim Berachamim Rabim. Mechayem Eitim Berachamim Rabim means who resurrects the dead with great mercy. Why did 200,000 people, why are they buried on Mount of Olives? Why did Menachem Begin said on his deathbed that he wanted to be buried on Mount of Olives and not in Mount Herzl? Why not be buried with the presidents of Israel, the prime ministers of Israel before him? Menachem Begin may have not been a religious Jew. He was full of Yiddishkeit. He was Masorti. He definitely cared about Bible, about Tanakh, about prayer. And he knew that there's a tradition of Tchiyat HaMetim, resurrection of the dead. When you look at every one of the tombstones in front of you, they're all facing west, towards not the Dome of the Rock, but what you have to imagine in front of you is the temple itself, a big square. We'll see this in a picture later on. This used to be the first and second temples. This is the area with the trees that we will visit, known as the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount, Har HaBayit in Hebrew. Jerusalem has a law. Everywhere you go in Yerushalayim, you see limestone, known as Jerusalem stone. Where does that come from? There's an idea that the holy city of Yerushalayim gives an atmosphere to the city. And in order to feel that atmosphere all over the city, which is 860,000 people, other than the old city that is 41,000, we're going to make everyone build their houses with Jerusalem stone, which is really a type of limestone. So here we are, standing in front of Jaffa Gate. On the right, we see a piece of what is called the Tower of David. That's a mosque, actually, but it's inside the fortress of the Tower of David that we'll see in a moment. And we're about to enter the holiest city in the world. When we look back, we'll get proof to that. There's actually a mezuzah here, so you can kiss the mezuzah and remember the scrolls in the mezuzah talking about the connection between the Jewish people and God. Here's a man trying to sell beigele, usually 5 shekels each, $1.50. $1 right now is 3.5. It went down dramatically in the past few years. I remember when $1 was 5 shekels, so it was worth it to bring dollars to Israel. But we're going to walk all the way through the Jaffa Gate into the old city. Now it's called the Jaffa Gate because it's facing the city of Jaffa by the Mediterranean Sea, Jaffa and Tel Aviv. Jaffa used to be the gateway to the land of Israel. Now, if you look towards the Jaffa Gate from the inside, you'll see that there's another gap in the wall. This is actually the new part of Yerushalayim. It's not the old city out over there with the trees. We are in the old city looking out. Why in the world would the 500-year-old wall have a hole, a gap in it? Well, the story goes like this. When the Kaiser came in the end of the 19th century, he made his way from Europe. He came to Yerushalayim. The decision was made to break the 500-year-old Turkish Ottoman walls built in the 16th century, to break it so that the horses and the chariot can come in not by foot. Really, he wouldn't come in by foot, but by horse, to give him respect coming into the holy city of Yerushalayim. Now, when you walk forward into the old city, you'll see something that everybody heard about and maybe visited. This is the Tower of David. Now, here's a little anecdote. David was never here. This is not a tower or a fortress that was built by David. It's not. It's a salute to David. The name is a salute to David, who 3,000 years ago conquered a Jebusite pagan city and made it into the city of David. It's called the Fortress of David, the Tower of David, to salute the man who established the city. We know of the King David Hotel, the David Citadel, many streets connected to the name of David, but this is really a fortress that dates back more or less 2,200, 2,300 years. The Maccabees were here, the Christians, different Christians, Byzantines, Crusaders, a king called Herod the Great was here, and even the Muslims and the Turks. So a lot of different people in different layers of time and archaeology were in this fortress. Why? Because it faces west towards the sea. You want to conquer Jerusalem, you have to conquer this first. Now, please hold on to your belongings. We're going into a very narrow area, straight into the Arab market. We saw the four quarters a couple minutes ago. Here's the shuk, or in Arabic, the shuk, the souk. And you could see that in the souk, everything is sold, right? Everybody wants to make a buck. You'll find a menorah by a cross, by sandals, different materials, cashmere, everything you want, basically. There's a cross, there's a menorah somewhere over here. Yeah, so this is their market. And if I kept walking straight down to the east, I would come directly to one of the many gates of Har HaBayit, of the Temple Mount. We're going to get there in a different way, not before we go to the lowest place in Jerusalem. So we are now in an area called Mount Zion. Mount Zion is just outside the Zion Gate, one of the gates surrounding the old city. This is not the lowest place in Jerusalem. That's our next site, but Mount Zion is the place of the room of the Last Supper. Pilgrims of Christianity, Christians who come from all over the world, mark this as the place of the Last Supper of Jesus, who was born a Jew, lived as a Jew, died as a Jew, was buried as a Jew, and later on a man called Paul moved away from Judaism and created Christianity. But Jesus had his Seder night here. With how many disciples? Just like the tribes of Israel? 12. Now listen to this. Why is this such a cool place? Because in this Christian important site for pilgrims, you have Arabic writing on the windows. You have a mihrab pointing towards Mecca for Muslims who prayed here in the time there were no more Byzantine or Crusader Christians. They came after them, the Mamelukes, later on the Ottomans, and they controlled this building, and they were praying, studying the Quran, and facing Mecca. This is kind of like the direction towards Mecca. What you're not seeing that is under this floor is also one of the theories about the burial place of King David, and that's why there's a yeshiva down there. So Jews find this a holy site because of the burial place for David. Muslims mark the same idea. They have a cemetery called Nebi Daud, Daud like David. And Christians talk about the Last Supper. In fact, when the Pope was here, he gave this place an olive tree statue because it's a symbol of peace, marking shalom between the three monotheistic religions, sharing a holy city. Down to the lowest part of Yerushalayim. Hold on, it's slippery. Put on your flashlights. Welcome to the city of David, the place where it all began. When you get to the bottom of the hill, you will actually start understanding why I said the lowest part. This is where the water is. The water goes to the lowest place. And this is Hezekiah's tunnel. There are many tunnels underground under the city of David. Jerusalem started from this area when David came with his commando unit and the leader of the commando called Yoav ben Tzruya, Yoav son of Tzruya, and they climbed in through one of the tunnels in the Bible called Sino, which literally means the pipe. Maybe that hints to a tunnel underground. They opened the gates of the city, they stormed the Jebusites, and a few days later, David is giving out kiddush, a little bit of cake, a little bit of sweet stuff to everyone who comes to visit the city of David that was now conquered. This is 3,000 years ago. Why is David so excited? A, he conquered the city of David, and Saul before him never did that. It's always nice to be number two, right? So he's number two, the second king of Israel. He did something that was never done before. But he also brought in the Ark of the Covenant, turning the capital of Israel, not just a political capital for the tribes of Israel, but also a religious capital, a place of inspiration by bringing in the Ark of the Covenant. But, and this is a big but, this is the lookout from the top of the city of David. I'm going to turn the camera around and you'll see the walls of the old city in front of you. You'll see a bunch of tourists looking towards the east. You'll see the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Great Dome in front of you. And maybe if you look really closely, you'll see the Mount Olives Cemetery, more than 200,000 people buried there. Now check this out. This is Al-Aqsa Mosque inside the old city, but the city of David is not in the old city. It's outside the 500-year-old walls that the Turks built. It's called the ancient city. So we are in the ancient city looking towards the old city, which is inside the walls. Do you get the difference? This is much more old than the old city itself, and it dates back at least to the time of David, or probably many thousands of years before that, when pagans were living in this area. Why does everybody want to live here? Because of the water spring in the bottom of the hill. Why does everybody want to live here? Because the main roads of Israel, east-west and north to south, meet in the city of Jebus that was conquered by David, turned into city of David and Jerusalem. I mentioned before that David brought in the Ark of the Covenant, but there was a big issue here. He did some good things for our people, killed a giant, Goliath, wrote the Sefer Tehillim, the book of Psalms. He was a redhead, he was a warrior, he was a poet, he was a great man, people loved him, but he was a man of passion. He saw her bathing on the roof, as Leonard Cohen says, right? He saw her bathing on the roof. In the song Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen is talking about King David. So here he is at the palace in the city of David, looking down, and he sees this beautiful woman in one of the buildings in the city of David, close to his palace. And he says to his servants, bring her over to me. He sleeps with her that night, and he sends her husband to the front line to die in battle. And God is teaching a lesson. He's basically saying, just like Moses, who sinned and did not enter the land, you, David, are a wonderful king. But if you sin, you have to pay for your mistakes. You're not going to build the first temple for Israel. Yes, you got the Ark of the Covenant up to the city of David. Todah Abba. Thank you very much. Solomon, his son, will be the one to build the first temple that will later on be destroyed by the Babylonians. And I mentioned the temple because this is the most dramatic thing that was found in the past 3 years in the city of David. They keep finding more and more undergrounds. Jerusalem's a city of layers. The deeper you dig, the more you find. And I'm talking about the pilgrimage road going from the bottom of the city of David all the way to the top of the hill, to the Temple Mount. This, you're looking at a 2,000-year-old road. There is no renovation here. Yes, the pipes, of course, are new. The ceiling is new. These are rocks. These are stones that were a main stairway up to the temple itself. When we move to Israel, we say we're making aliyah, literally mean we're going up, maybe spiritually, not physically. When we make pilgrimage to the temple, we say aliyah laregel. Making pilgrimage in Hebrew, I love this, is going up for the holiday, but regel also means foot. In this case, we're making pilgrimage during the holiday Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Many, many, many thousands of Jews were walking through these steps, just found a couple of years back. The Shagrir, the ambassador of the United States, was taken on a special tour to this very, very special road. But now we're back into the old city, and we're looking at the flag of Israel, 4 young ladies sitting in the Jewish quarter. If you've been here in the Jewish quarter, you know this is the place you can buy a lot of different food. There's an Ahava Old Sea store, product store. There's flags all around. There's a barbecue place. It's a fun place to be. But if I go back to the first picture I showed you, you're looking at the Chorva synagogue, a destroyed synagogue, destroyed 3 times upon the past few hundreds of years. It was now rebuilt about a decade ago, and it's now a synagogue where Shacharit, Mincha, and Arvit take place, and people who want to go up to the roof where the flag is, you can go and get a great view of the old city. By the way, the fact that this picture was taken in a time there's a flag is probably because it was taken around Independence Day time of year. But what is interesting to me is what we're not looking at in the picture. There's a mosque right over here by the synagogue. This is the Jewish quarter, and there's a mosque. That's a minaret. So this mosque is not active ever since Independence War. But talking about a shared city and different people living in it, Christian, Muslims, Jews, it's very interesting to see that in every quarter, you have other religions as well living. For example, when we go today into the Muslim quarter and we walk through, we'll see a lot of flags of Israel. We'll see some Jewish homes, yeshivas even. One of our prime ministers, Ariel Sharon, had an apartment in the Muslim quarter. In the Christian quarter, you have Muslims. In the Jewish quarter, you have Muslims and Christians living. So it's a very interesting area. The 41,000 people living here manage most of the time to keep the quiet and to live together. I want you to take a look at this amazing, amazing site we just entered. We pray towards this 3 times a year, not only aiming our prayers to Jerusalem and to the Western Wall, but also to Beit HaMikdash, to the temple itself. Well, the name of this place in Hebrew is Har HaBayit. Har is mount and Bait is house, the house of God. So both of Beit HaMikdash, both of the temples were up on this mountain. We would go through security just in these arches over here. We would meet the people from the religious authority, the Waqf, the Muslims, and we would see some soldiers if we go up to the Temple Mount today. Non-Muslims could go up for a few hours a day, twice during the morning time. If you're a Muslim, you could go 24/7, pretty much every day of the year. This is something that has been changing after the second Intifada that broke out in the year 2000. We used to be able to go into the Dome of the Rock where our temple used to be, the rock of the foundation of the world, the binding of Isaac. We'll be there in a moment. But after the Intifada, it was too fragile. Israel said, we have sovereignty, but we don't want to risk security. We don't want to trigger more riots by allowing other religions, not only Jews, go into this important Muslim building, this important Muslim holy site. This is Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa in Arabic and in Hebrew means on the edge, the farthest point on the Temple Mount. You're looking at the southern wall of the Temple Mount from the inside. Al-Aqsa can hold 5,000 people, and it's the place where Muhammad, prophet of Islam, landed with his flying horse El-Barak in this area, in the southern part of the Temple Mount. He tied his horse. He walked up to the center of the mountain, the highest point of this hill called Mount Moriah. There was nothing there because the temples were already destroyed. And from there, he ascended up to the night sky with Angel Gabriel that we also talk about in Judaism. So many things are similar between Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Some of the pillars of faith of Islam, like fasting, the month of Ramadan. You know, we have the idea of fasting, maybe not a month. By the way, right now is Ramadan. Giving charity, believing in one God, praying, you know, all these different things are also shared by Judaism and in a way by Christianity as well. But I didn't bring you here to look from the outside. I want to take you to the inside. So even though we're not Muslims, we have Zoom and we're able to go into the Dome of the Rock. Take a look around you. We're right in the center of Mount Moriah. In a moment, I'll show you a picture that will illustrate that this is really the place of the first and second temples. These tourists are all taking a picture of this gorgeous, really beautiful, beautiful building. And as I click right now, we're going to be inside that building. You're going to see the dome in a moment, right above us. It's a little bit dark. I have a better picture, but this picture will allow you to see the rock itself, the rock of the foundation of the world. According to Judaism, also the place of the center of Mount Moriah, and maybe the binding of Isaac. 4,000 years ago, más o menos, more or less, is the binding of Isaac. 3,000 years ago, David conquers Jebus. 2,000 years ago, the second temple is destroyed in the year 70. So if you look to this place, you're really looking to a connection to our religion, to Judaism, and you're looking to a place that was marked by Muslims as the place where Muhammad ascended up to the sky with Gabriel, the angel, in that night journey when he came from Saudi Arabia, from Mecca, all the way to a city mentioned. It's called El-Quds, not Jerusalem, El-Quds. What does Quds sound like in Hebrew? Like the word Kodesh, holy. The holy city, the interpretation of Islam is that this is Jerusalem. I want to show one more little picture here, and then I want to take questions and comments before we go into the second part of our tour. So look at this illustration where you can see the Temple Mount, the temple itself, and what it looks like today. do that again. This is the walls of the second, this is the temple itself and the 4 retaining walls around the temple itself. You can understand that the western retaining wall, where the trees are, is the western wall that remained pretty much intact after the destruction when the Romans destroyed the second temple on Tisha B'Av of the year 70. So this gives you an idea that the Dome of the Rock, this beautiful golden dome, the place where Muslims pray till this day, the place of the binding of Isaac, the place where the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodashim, Holy of Holies, used to be, is exactly in the place of the Dome of the Rock today. Temple, pretty much on the site of the Dome of the Rock. So I want to stop just for a moment and see if there's any questions in chat, or if you want to ask or comment anything before we continue to the next part. I will remind you that at the end of our tour, I'll take questions and comments, and I'd love to hear your stories and comments at the end as well. So, okay, fantastic. I want to take you right now underground once again. If you're claustrophobic, this is not a good place for you to tour if you're not on a Zoom tour, but this is actually one of the coolest places in Jerusalem. When I say cool, I'm talking about temperature, but I'm also talking about it's a really cool place to visit because it's underground and it's walking parallel to the Western Wall. These stones date back to a king called Herod. Herod the Great, Herod the Wicked, was a Jew. He was a grandson of a convert to Judaism. He was a puppet king for the Romans. So Jews did not really like him, but then again, he renovated the second temple. They say that if you've never seen the second temple that Herod renovated and the walls he put around it, the retaining walls, like the Western Wall, you've never seen a beautiful structure in your entire life. It was so beautiful, right? But Herod built things to stay. These Herodian rocks have a border around them. That's how we know they're Herodian. This specific rock is 500 tons. How in the world did they move this rock to be above the one underneath it? There's no cement, by the way. It's the power and the weight of the rock that gives stability. You need stability because Jerusalem is right by the Syrian-African rift, where there's earthquakes, big ones. Every 100 years, there's a huge one, statistically talking. So it was important to make this very, very strong. How did they probably move this rock? Archaeologists talk about ramps. You build, you make one level, you make a ramp, and either push or pull with donkeys, oxes, and move it. Still, that would be very, very difficult to do if this is 500 tons.
Moshe,
So it's,
excuse me.
yes.
There was one person that said that they're not seeing the image. I do see it. Maybe if the people.
Does that tell me, Itzik, do you see the image, by the way, or?
No, I just see your screen with Gilad Shalit.
What? Wow. But you do, Benson. Okay, let's hear. Let me, okay, no problem. Let's try that again. Tell me if you see it right now.
Yes, yes.
Everybody sees it?
Yes.
Well, and just by the way, you saw before when I was talking about the Dome of the Rock and all that
I
stuff,
saw
right?
that, yes, yes.
Zoom is interesting today. Okay, but here we are. That's the important thing. Look, stay with me because I want to walk you through. And I think I said before that, in my opinion, most of us Israelis living in Israel have never walked through the Western Wall tunnels. What's the reason? It opened in 1996, 25 years ago, by a man you probably know called Benjamin Netanyahu. And it doesn't go under the Temple Mount, it goes parallel to the Temple Mount. And when you come to the center of the tunnel, you see these ladies praying. 24/7, 365 days a year, there's people praying in front of this wall because this angle faces towards Kodesh HaKodashim. These ladies are praying in the closest that Jews can pray to the place where the high priest would come into on Yom Kippurim, the Day of Atonement. No other Jew was ever allowed into Kodesh HaKodashim. It was such a holy place that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would have a rope around his clothing, around his robe, so that if he dies or is injured or is sick for some reason, you can pull him out. So the question that is raised here, what is holy? Are the rocks holy? Is the place holy? Or maybe when we come up here, another type of holiness is connecting to our history, to the hands of our Saba and Safta and great-grandfather and mother that maybe yearned and prayed to be at this place, right? So there's different types of holiness. There could be a time in our year like Shabbat or holidays, a place, or maybe it's a connection to our heritage and to our people. I think the Kotel reminds us that it's a little bit of all of them. So I want to walk you all the way through the Western Wall tunnels, and you'll really get a look at where the rocks that were built by Herod connect to what is called, right over here, Mount Moriah, because these are not rocks. There's no border around these stones. This is bedrock, and above bedrock, Herod built the wall itself, his builders built, right? So when you keep walking, you see more and more of Mount Moriah that is under the part that is built, meaning the Western Wall tunnels. So I want you to take a look to the left, and you'll see beautiful pillars. There was actually commerce here, right in front of the entrances to the temple itself. There was like a main street where people could buy a goat to sacrifice, something to drink, maybe a dove to sacrifice. This was a very important market, very close to the center, to the heart of Jerusalem, the heart of the Jewish world, the Beit Mikdash, the temple. The retaining wall that was not destroyed in the year 70 is called in Hebrew the Western Wall, the Kotel Ma'aravi. But Israelis just say Kotel. Kotel means wall. And when you look down, you'll see the people. The more important part of the wall is looking at the people coming from all over the world, putting their notes in this place that in a way is online with God. Look at the Kriyat Torah, reading of Torah, Sephardic Torah over here. This is the men's section. There's a women's section beyond the bridge going up to the Temple Mount. There's a relatively new egalitarian section as well. On Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, there's Torah readings, and of course on holidays as well. So on a Monday and Thursday, you'll hear music, you'll see balloons in the air. It's a really, really fun and amazing thing to come here during Bar Mitzvah days. But if you've ever been to the Western Wall during Shavuot, Pesach, and Sukkot, you've seen it at its peak. And that is because there is a ceremony called Birkat HaKohanim, the blessing of the priests. 3 times a year in these 3 pilgrimage festivals, you'll see the white, the shawls of prayer, the talis, and you can just imagine the words, Yevarechecha Adonai ve'ishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. God will bless you and guard you. God will shine his face upon you, and God will give you peace. And imagine thousands of Kohanim saying this at the same time. Now, when I was 6 years old, I came to the Kotel for the first time. My parents moved from Phoenix to Israel when I was a year old. And basically, my first time with my school coming to the Kotel was in 1st grade. What they do in Israel is they give the 1st graders a siddur, a prayer book for the first time at the Kotel. Secular schools as well do this. I will never forget the moment getting my siddur, saying the Shema, and looking up at this amazing wall that I've learned so much about and heard so much about when I was in 1st grade. But I'll also never forget the moment when I was sworn into the Israeli army, saying 3 times in front of the wall, I swear to defend the state of Israel, yelling out, holding a M16 in one hand and a Torah, a Sefer Torah, a Bible, a Sefer Torah book in my hand. It was a very, very emotional and powerful moment that I will remember. And I think for all of us, whenever we come back to the Kotel, and here we are together today, yet so far away, but we're together at the wall, we make our own connections, and we don't just learn history, we connect to our story. So I want to ask, if you don't mind, that we take one moment to leave the official tour and to say a prayer together. And this is where I ask, if you don't mind, some of you or all of you to unmute yourself, and I will say the blessing of the priests, right? I'll say it in Hebrew, word after word. and I'll ask you to repeat after me. Please bring your prayers to Yerushalayim and think of who you want to ask for, pray for, or say thanks to. So please try and stay in a silent atmosphere. And once I say the word, repeat after me. Yevarechecha
Varechecha,
Adonai ve'ishmerecha
Yishmerecha,
Ya'er
Yair,
Adonai
Adonai,
panav
Panav,
elecha
Elecha,
vichuneka
Choneka,
Yisa
Isa,
Adonai
Adonai,
panav
Panav,
elecha
Elecha,
v'yasem
Yasem,
lecha
Lecha,
shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom. Amen. How many of our grandparents, our parents and grandparents, I know mine, were never here, but prayed and aimed their prayers 3 times a day, not only to Israel, but the Talmud tells us that you aim your heart to Israel. If you're on the west, you aim your heart to the east. If you're on the east of the world, you aim to the west, to Israel. But if you're in Israel, you aim your prayers and your heart to Yerushalayim. If you're in Yerushalayim, you aim your prayers to the Kotel. And if you're standing at the western wall, the Kotel, you aim your prayers to the place of the temple and the Kodesh HaKodashim. But you know what? We really cannot take this for granted. I feel that many of the younger generation, and I include myself, but I think younger than me as well, who do not remember the 6-day war, do not understand that getting on a plane and coming into Yerushalayim is not just something that you could have done between 48 and 67. I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves again, if possible. Thank you. This is a 2-minute video. We'll see a big part of it, which is mostly movement of soldiers from Mount of Olives that we started our tour at, listening to the radio to their commander, Moshe Gold, who tells them this is a historic moment. You, the paratroopers, are going to conquer not just Jerusalem, but the old city. We're going to have a final parade on the Temple Mount. And then you'll hear a radio man walking to the Western Wall, almost in tears, saying, look, I'm not a religious man, but here we are, we're standing in front of the Western Wall. Finally, you'll hear the soldiers saying the Shechianu blessing, thanking God for being part of this amazing moment, and singing together Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. So let's, and that is everything you'll hear in Hebrew, so maybe you'll understand more of the context, but you'll see the trucks entering through the Lion's Gate up to the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. Let me know if you see the clip. Can you see it?
Yes.
Today.
Moshe, we see, we cannot hear.
That's fine. It's Hebrew. It's Zebeseder. Final parade on the Temple Mount. The soldiers are conquering, coming in through Lion's Gate. That is Temple Mount. Temple Mount in our hands. Temple Mount in our hands. 3 words that changed history. Stop firing. Stop firing. I'm walking down right now to the Western Wall. I'm not a religious man, but here I am, standing in front of the Western Wall. The soldiers are blessing the Shechianu right in front of the Western Wall. The chief rabbi comes with the Sefer Torah. People are putting notes in the wall. And finally, the song starts. Yerushalayim shel Zahav, v'shel Nechoshmet v'shel Or, Jerusalem of gold and of light and of copper. After so many years of waiting, Jerusalem is back in our hands. From the end of the Independence War to 1967, it was in the hand of the Jordanians. When you talk to paratroopers that conquered this old city and came to the Temple Mount and to the Western Wall, they'll say that they were crying, some of them. And they were crying because, first of all, they lost a lot of their friends that never made it to this moment. But they were also crying from excitement. All the tension came out. The Shechianu, the singing, the blessing of the rabbi, the shofar being blown by the chief rabbi of the army. All these moments are part of our history, are part of our story of the 6-day war. But when the war was over, sovereignty over this place, the Temple Mount, remained in the hand of Israel. Many people thought this would be a good time to maybe make an agreement. There were people in Israel that were saying, oh, we should give it back. No agreement was signed. The Arabs were, and I'm talking about Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, that we defeated, tripling the size of Israel after the 1967 war. The Arabs were not going to negotiate with us. We, till this day, have sovereignty over the Temple Mount. The Arabs, and specifically an organization called the Waqf, have religious control over the religious sites on the Temple Mount, meaning the mosques themselves. All the important people in Israel wanted to be part of this moment. The man on the right is Yitzhak Rabin, the chief of staff of the Israeli army in the 6-day war, later on prime minister of Israel, murdered in 1995 by a Jew. The man in the center is Moshe Dayan with the patch on his eye, Minister of Defense, and the man on the left is the general that made this happen. This is Uzi Narkis, a general in the Israeli Defense Force. He was in charge of this part of the battle. Remember, there were battles in the Golan Heights, in Judea and Samaria, in the Sinai Desert. We won all of those battles in 6 days. This is the rabbi blowing the shofar. And finally, these are the 3 very, very famous paratroopers standing in front of the wall 40 years later on the left. They come back to reenact the picture. I got to tell you, in the newspapers, every time they put this picture in there, many people say, hey, that's not them, that was me, right? You know, so there's different people are claimed for the fame, but it's still very cool to see the same people who fought for us and fought for this, to see them coming back towards this place. The Muslim Quarter is a fascinating place to visit. We're not done yet because I really want to show you not only the soldiers here, but a bunch of people walking through the Muslim Quarter, the largest of the 4 quarters of the old city. And they're walking in this area, and you can see flags of Israel. I mentioned before, Ariel Sharon, Prime Minister of Israel at a point, he passed a few years ago, he bought a house in the Muslim Quarter. That's a statement saying, you know, we're connected, we belong here, right? Now, when you walk through the Muslim Quarter, again, there's a bunch of markets, souk in Arabic, shuk in Hebrew, market in English, but there's also a bunch of pilgrims walking the Via Dolorosa, the road of suffering, up towards what they see as the holiest site, which is the place of crucifixion, burial, and resurrection of Jesus himself. This is the room that every Christian wants to visit unless he's Protestant. Why? The Protestants believe that he's buried outside of the walls of the old city. But the Catholics, the Greek Orthodox, the Coptics, the Ethiopians, the Armenians, they all have parts of this important church. And they want to go into this building where the cave is, where Jesus, according to their tradition, was buried. He was buried on a Friday. On the Sunday, his followers came to visit his tomb and he was gone. So this proved to them that he wasn't human, and in fact, maybe even the Son of God. So in this building, what they mark is the end of the road of suffering, the Via Dolorosa, right? But also the crucifixion, burial, and of course, the resurrection. But you can't just visit Yerushalayim without going to one of the most important parts of Jerusalem today, because if you go to this place, the Jewish market in the newer part of Yerushalayim, this is where it's all happening these days. This is the place where on Independence Day, there's celebrations. When Purim, everybody's dressed up and dancing in a great dance and parade. And when on Friday, a place where on Friday afternoon, everybody's doing their last minute shopping before Shabbat comes in. How do you know that Shabbat is coming in if you live in Yerushalayim? How does everybody know around the city with these 900,000 people? There's a siren that goes off, believe it or not. By the way, in the city of Tzfat as well, my grandfather's from Tzfat, they still have in these 2 cities a siren that goes off. Other ultra-religious communities have sirens as well. Where does this go back to? This tradition of having a siren to start the Shabbat, to tell people, chill, relax, Shabbat is coming in. So 2,000 years ago, on the top of the Temple Mount on the southwestern side, there was a man who would blow the trumpets and say to people, hey, leave your fields. The sun is coming down. Shabbat is almost here. It's so cool in Israel how every street name, every riverbed, every place in Israel is connected to the Bible, to our sources, to the story of our nation. And even the siren in Yerushalayim goes back to the man standing on the top of the Temple Mount, blowing the trumpet, kind of a siren 2,000 years ago, and marking the beginning of the Shabbat, telling people, Yalla, let's start our Shabbat together,
Allah.
go home, and Shabbat Shalom. Well, maybe he didn't say Yalla. You gotta visit the shuk, and most importantly, when you're at the shuk, you have to see if you're into sweet pastries or your family is. This is called the marzipan rogalach. Maybe you've been here. Everybody's buying the marzipan rogalach. Very, very sweet and a nice place to end your visit at the Yehuda market. If everybody can please mute themselves, make sure to mute yourself because there's a lot of extra sound here. I want to take our last few minutes before I take questions and comments and show you one last thing because, we're talking about Israel today, Jerusalem today. So I was talking to my nephew. Believe it or not, this is my nephew. This is Asaf. He's a paratrooper in the Army. And I said to Asaf that you'll see is a very strong, you'll see the way he talks, his English. He's very proud of Israel. In this time of his life, he's even like, I don't know if the word is proud. He feels very strong about our land, about our state. And especially it comes out on Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day. So listen to what he wishes Israel on its birthday. By the way, can you, but you're not going to hear the sound because for some reason we can't hear the sound. But what can I do so that you hear the sound? It's not allowing you to share both. Let me try one last time.
You can share just the sound.
Yeah, right. So you saw the picture of him. Let's do what Itzik said. I think that's a good idea. Tell me if you can, just give me a thumbs up if you can actually hear him.
My name is Asaf Haklai, and I'm from the Paratroopers unit. I want to wish you all Happy Independence Day! I want to wish this amazing country security, health, most of all, peace for this country, that it will be quiet, and that you can celebrate this day as the best that you can. Love you all.
Asaf, like so many others, feels this in these days of Yom HaAtzmaut and after Yom HaAtzmaut, coming to Jerusalem Day very soon. That makes this tour very appropriate, by the way. He feels so proud of his country. He just feels proud. And another person we're going to hear here is Tzu. Please tell me if you can hear the voice of Tzu, who is 26 years old, just got out of the army as an officer.
No.
Okay, so you see him talking, but you can't hear him. I'm sorry. Let's do that again. And you'll show me a thumbs up if you can hear him.
No.
We still see the picture of your nephew.
No, we are still in your screen. You need to unshare the screen and try to share the sound.
Believe me, this is what I do all day, Zoom, but for some reason it's not, with this, it's not giving me the option. Let me try one last time, and if not, I'll just quote him. I apologize for this. Let me try one last time. Here, advanced, share the music, and let's do it again. There we go. One moment. And this is Tzu speaking.
Hello, my name is Tzu. I am from Sansa in the south of Israel, and I wish my country a loveful and combined year. I want us to be united, strong, to feel ourselves in happiness and love for each other, even if we disagree.
One of the biggest, and now I have to share back to the screen. Basic, share. Can you see me right now? Yes, no?
Yes, we see you.
Good. One of the basic things that Israelis are talking about this day, other than the coronavirus, is the split that we do have these days in Israel. We just had our fourth election within just a couple years, for starting in 2019. Fourth elections, a lot of money spent, a lot of propaganda that did not bring the people closer together. So I think it's very symbolic that the young generation keeps saying, you know, all I want is people to love each other. We want to be able to live in this land, appreciate it, but also really understand that we can only be here when we're respecting each other and being with each other. I want to take you right now to one last thing, and what I'll do very quickly, if you don't mind, is we'll go around this issue and we will sing together a song called Yerushalayim Shel Zahav that I'm sure you all heard about. And the words of Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, can you see the screen I'm sharing of Yerushalayim Shel Zahav?
Yes.
I want to read the last two paragraphs in this song written before the 6-day war, and hopefully you can see it. We've returned to the cisterns and to the marketplace. A ram's horn, a shofar, calls out on the Temple Mount in the Old City. And in the caves, in the mountain, thousands of suns shine. We will once again descend to the Dead Sea by way of Jericho. It was written before the 6-day war. These two last paragraphs talking about coming back to the Old City were added later on. And when that young lady, Shuli Natan, got on the stage after the 6-day war, she started singing. The song ended and everybody was silent. She thought she did a terrible job, but then she realized when everybody stood up and clapped for like 5 minutes that everybody was so emotional about this song that hits right in the belly button, right in the heart of the people sitting there, coming back to Jerusalem after so many years, after 19 years being in control of Jordanian soldiers, was an amazing, amazing moment. And I know that some of you probably saw this and remember this as a great moment in the modern history of our people. It almost became like the second anthem of Israel. What I would like to ask from you right now, just so the sound of the singing sounds good, I would recommend, I will sing out loud, but I'm asking you to sing with me while you're muted. If we sing together and you're not muted, you're going to hear it in different times. So please sing with me. We're going to sing the first two paragraphs and the pizmon, the chorus of the most Jerusalemite song, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. אוויר צלול כיין וריח חורנים נישא ברוח הארבעים כל פעמונים ובתרדמת אילן ואבן בויה בחלומה העיר שבדד יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב
ושל
נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. חברים יקרים, dear friends, over the past, about an hour, we did something very special. And in order to kind of recap everything that we did and the places that we were at, so that you can visit them next time you're here. And by the way, this is like 2 days of touring in real life. That's one of the advantages of Zoom. You could really see a lot in a short time. I want to go through everything we've seen. We started at the area of Mount of Olives, which is east of the Old City, right over here. We talked about the resurrection of the dead. We went to the Jaffa Gate in this area by Mamillah, where it says Mamillah. And then we went to the room of the Last Supper on Mount Zion, talking about a shared holy site for Jews, Christians, and Muslims. We talked about the 4 quarters of the old city and went down to the lowest place in this area, which is the city of David that I'm marking south of the old city, south of that red line. Everything is underground, including the tunnels that David used to conquer 3,000 years ago. We talked about the Chorva synagogue and being in the center of the Jewish quarter, and we went up to the Temple Mount into the Dome of the Rock. We also mentioned Al-Aqsa and the Muslim idea and tradition of Muhammad ascending up to the sky from under where today is the Dome of the Rock, the rock of the foundation of the world. We mentioned that this is also the place of the binding of Isaac, and it's the place of the first temple and the second temple, right? So every religion has its connection, but unfortunately these days in the Temple Mount, we're not really allowed to dig down and find connections to our time. Not that I need a validation that I'm connected to this land. I don't need that validation, but I'll tell you a little story. About 15 years ago, my friend who's an archaeologist was walking in the Kidron Valley down over here when he found rubble that was thrown away by the Muslims when they were building a new mosque under Al-Aqsa. And he touches this rubble and he understands it's from the Temple Mount. He goes to an archaeological dig. Please mute yourself. He goes to an archaeological dig and he finds coins.
Everybody needs to go on mute.
Thank you so much for being with us. Now, you served in the Yom Kippur War in 1973. What are you feeling this year on?
I just muted him, and whoever wants can unmute themselves in a moment. But the rubble that was found here was sifted later on in a place called Emek Tzurim. I myself found a coin from the time of the Roman Jewish revolt against the Romans from the year 66. So it's amazing to find the scrolls, the Hebrew scrolls of the Essenes down at the Dead Sea. It's amazing to find a coin from the Temple Mount. It's amazing to find pillars from the Royal Basilica under Al-Aqsa Mosque. But these days, when you go up to the Temple Mount, you're walking in a way, you're very much connected to the place, but you're not allowed to pray out loud, at least. And it's a very complicated, fragile, and intense place. Nevertheless, it's an amazing place to visit if you're keeping, there's different halachic views how to visit the Temple Mount, and it's definitely something that can be done. We also went into the Western Wall tunnels. We said a prayer in front of the wall, the blessing of the priests. We talked about the wall in the time of the pilgrimage, the 3 pilgrimage festivals. We went through the Via Dolorosa to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre that I'm marking right now on the left. And finally, we got a chance to also sing together the song, marking and talking about Jerusalem after the very successful 6-day war when we came back to Yerushalayim. In just a couple of days, we'll be celebrating Yom Yerushalayim, marking the conquer of Yerushalayim back in the 6-day war. So I would like to stop here for a moment. And first of all, thank you for your attention and listening and watching. I'm sorry for that little technical glitch, but I went around it. So hopefully it was, you didn't miss anything dramatic. And I hope you enjoyed the tour. Let me see some of your questions or comments. So some of you are saying that Temple Mount is not under Israel's sovereignty. Well, Israel controls the Temple Mount. We do not control the religious side of it. We do control the Temple Mount. I mean, as far as I know, and I was taught by people there at the Temple Mount and by people, well, in any case, we don't have to argue about this. Maybe it's the language, but in any case, Israel has control over the Temple Mount and it's not giving it away so fast. We did respect the Muslim world and we allow the Waqf to have religious sovereignty, religious control over the time of prayer, and other issues that have to do with religion in their mosques at the Temple Mount. A very complicated issue and a very complex place to visit, but also beautiful and of course holy. Is there any thought to replacing the Waqf? The short answer is no. Thanks for the question, Paula. It's not about, in this area, in this question, it's not about the Palestinian or the Arabs This is the entire Muslim world. And I think when the politicians weigh what could happen if you take away the power from the Waqf for the respect that is given to them by controlling the religious issues of the mountain, the weight is towards not changing it and staying in the status quo. So, and that could be debated. Many people think otherwise. Many people think it was a mistake to give control over the Temple Mount religiously to the Waqf back in '67, but this is the status quo right now. Our holiest place, shared sacred space is essential, right? And I agree, you know, some of you are saying that currently it's not so. You can't really come up to the Temple Mount and say Shema Yisrael unless you say it in your heart. That is reality. I'll just tell you that many organizations in Israel make a point out of coming up to the Temple Mount on Tisha B'Av on holidays to show presence and to say, hey, don't forget that under that dome in that place 2,000 years ago, that was the heart of Israel. That was our temple, our second temple destroyed by the Romans. An intense place and an amazing place to visit as well.
Thank you, Moshe. It's a wonderful, amazing tour you provided us.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And, you know, next time you come to Israel, you have another friend in Israel. My name is Moshe Gold. I'm on Facebook. I'm online as well. And again, sending you love from Jerusalem, from my moshav outside of Jerusalem, all the way to the US on this beautiful day. I hear it's a beautiful day, so go enjoy it. Thank you for being here on such a beautiful day with this Zoom tour.
And if anybody goes to visit to Israel and needs a tour guide, Moshe Gold is available. So it's a wonderful job. And we'll have to have you come back by Zoom. And if you can come in person, like you're talking about, possibly in the summer, we'd like that very much.
Right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Itzik, for all the little, you know, little help with all the technical stuff. Thanks for that help with that little issue. Great to see all of you again. I recognize some of the faces from our last tour. And one last time, thank you, of course, Itzik, and thank you, Benson, for putting this together. We've been in touch for months now. It's so nice that it actually happens to be with everybody together. So how can you get the recording for this? That reminds me, I have to send it. I'll send it to Benson. It will take a few hours, but I'll send him the recording for it.
And we have a YouTube channel that we will post it to. So it maybe take another day or two after we get it, but yes, we'll do that. We will have it help.
Yofi. Toda rabba, everyone. Shavua tov. Have a wonderful week and enjoy your Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moshe.
B'simcha.
Thank you.